Many thanks for staying with us. You're watching TVC Breakfast. Well, severe flash flooding in Maiduguri's MMC and Jere local government areas have affected more than 239,000 people, with reports of wild animals such as crocodiles and snakes escaping their enclosures. And according to the National Emergency Management Authority's data, this disaster is part of the broader nationwide floods in the country, which have already claimed more than 200 lives and impacted more than 800,000 people across 29 states. And as the federal government offers condolences, pressing concerns remain, particularly for vulnerable groups such as unaccompanied children, older persons, as well as people living with disabilities who require protection and shelter. That's what we want to discuss now as we bring in Titi Akosa to discuss the response efforts and humanitarian needs. She is the Executive Director, Center for 21st Century Issues. Titi Akosa, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good morning.
Right, and such an unpalatable, subject matter before us for discussion. I wonder how you view the happenings in Borno State, because that has been in the news all through the week. It's not the only state, but what's your insight into these issues?
I think even if it's the only issue, it's worth it because it's a significant event that is ravaging Nigeria, and we've had predictions that in the coming weeks we could have more states affected, almost about 23 states more to be affected. So it's a significant issue we need to really address, judging from the fact that already we have inflation, people are in a state of hopelessness, people are saying they are hungry. Of course, people are asking for better minimum wage, and there's a whole lot of problems, insecurity already, and now added to it this extreme weather event. It's a very significant issue, and I will tell you that we are not happy that this is happening, and the reason is because we already know that Nigeria is addressing climate change. Climate change is very easy for everybody to be talking about these days, and Nigeria has been talking about this for years. This is not the first time we're experiencing this kind of massive flooding. I think 2 years ago, the whole of Bayelsa also experienced this.
And Bayelsa is also in the news again.
Okay, so it's been happening. This is Alo Dam or river or so. Now, very soon we will hear of Lagdo Dam, and that one has been happening year in, year out. This is not new. What is not happening is that we are not confronting it the way we should confront it. There is a whole lot of planning that goes into this so that we will not allow this kind of disaster to happen again. If we are really planning the way we ought to plan, if we are really doing the things we ought to do, then we should not be going every year. We are all just predicting without any planning to address those predictions. That's all I see. There is a whole disconnect between weather forecasting and planning for those forecasts. People will say, oh, we are alerting you for flooding. You want people to relocate to where? People who are already battling with poverty and problems, challenges, and then you tell them to relocate to where? Who is managing those relocations? What is government doing about this? This is where we have a disconnect, and I think government needs to sit down and do a thorough technical analysis of all our dams in Nigeria. Because when those dams were built, they were built when we are not talking about climate change. So those dams were built without taking into account the excess rainfall or the regular rainfall pattern that we're experiencing now. The kind of extreme weather events we've been experiencing in the last 10 years should have given us that indication that we need to do something different from our normal flood alerts, warnings that we give to people, that we need to plan more. We plan more for where we can relocate people to, and even help people, support them with relocation. What is government doing to support them? Yes, we know they give relief materials. Must we always allow these disasters to happen? Then we start giving relief materials. That's not sustainable.
Okay, so for what you are saying now, our flood preparedness is not actually effective. But if you are saying the government has to always prepare, what action points would you want them to put in place? Because it seems like every year that this happens, the government are just going cap in hand to the federal government to alert them and to also beg for or ask for their actions towards it, and yet nothing is done. Like you talked about Bielsa, right. Before you know it, the water just fizzled away and nothing was done. Communities were destroyed and all of that. We are seeing Borno State. Very soon, you will see that the dam, the Oyo Dam, will be released, and everybody, that's what I'm talking about.
I think there are different actions that needed to be done. First of all, we need, like I said, we need an assessment of the whole issue. We know where these floodings occur. At least we've experienced it over 10 years now. So we need to look at those places. What are the engineering technology that we need to help us live above these floods? That is number one. Then we must put together an early warning system. Not just an early warning system that predicts. It's an early warning system that has into it what needs to be done, actions that needed to be done. For instance, now, we are only talking about flooding. What about excessive heat? People die as a result of that, and nobody is taking an account of it. Who is measuring the air quality? Yes, for these days now, we are having some air quality measurement across Nigeria. We have a app for it. You can see what I call a real-time download of what is happening around Lagos now in terms of air quality. You understand? That is one bit. What are the health outcomes? What are the health implications of extreme heat events? Do we have those analyses ready so that we can use that to do our early warning preparation? Right. That is another gap that we are still having. But I want to believe that if we are serious about it, we can really address it and then ensure that we protect the lives and property of our people. Apart from that, we need to have what I call a safe haven for people who have been displaced. Because when you are displaced, it's a very sudden thing. No person plans for it. Even if you want to plan for it, those who are displaced, the vulnerable population, do they have the financing to do that?
To relocate to safer spaces.
Yeah. So it depends on analysis. If we have real community engagement with vulnerable populations, people we know might likely be affected, then we have information on what to do. It will help us, it will point us to the right address, the right action to take in terms of building safe havens, helping people. I know that some NEMA at the state levels have some safe havens. For instance, in Lagos, I think they have about 3 of them spread across the whole of Lagos. But when you have the magnitude of what is happening in Borno,
and I wanted to even ask for that.
Yeah, it can't help. We don't know what they have in Borno. Right. But with what they have in Borno, I don't think any safe haven could contain the kind of...
Because I also wanted to ask how sufficient you think the facilities, the relief response or the responses from the states, the federal government, specifically in the case of Borno, because that's the one we are seeing at the moment, and even elsewhere. How sufficient do you think they are?
Honestly, I don't have any data on that, so okay. I cannot speak authoritatively on that. But I tell you, with the magnitude of what we have, there is hardly any state that is ready to address those kind of problems that we are seeing in Borno, because we are not only talking of displaced people, we are talking of water submerging zoos, cemeteries, and wild animals escaping.
Even correctional centers.
Yeah, I think the traditional rulers' place also is affected. A lot of public infrastructures are affected. So that magnitude is not something anybody is ready to address in terms of how much money you are going to use for restoration. And this is why, for us as civil society, we have advocated for loss and damage funds under the climate change. And good enough, the UNFCCC have acceded to that. And the operationalization of this fund is ongoing right now. And I think a whole lot of civil society with policymakers are going to meet in Baku in the next 1 week or so, from 18th to 20th, to continue with the operationalization of that fund. And there are a few things we've been asking from that fund, and that we need rapid response funds, that when things hit like this, within 1 or 2 days, money should flow to communities where we're having this extreme event. As much as we also prepare for this extreme event, there should be funding to prepare and everything. But looking at Nigeria, the way our federation is organized, which of our ministries is going to be the recipient of this fund, knowing that the Ministry of Environment leads when it comes to climate change.
Absolutely.
And when you want to receive funding from those kinds of institutions, you must have a national designated authority. So for now, national designated authority still resides with the Ministry of Environment. But I know that when it comes to humanitarian issues that really talk about disaster and issues of extreme events, we know humanitarian affairs is involved. We know ecological fund is involved. And I think there are other line health also is involved. So it's time for us to really sit down and map these issues and address how are we going to prepare even when this fund starts flowing. What do we need to do? Because if care is not taken the way we are going about it, we will still wait for almost another 10 years to get funding from the loss and damage the way we did with the Green Climate Fund. It was just this year that we have a direct access entity. And from the loss and damage, I was at the meeting, the second meeting, and what we are actually asking for is direct budget support to countries from the developing world. And so if we have a direct budget support with our ecological fund that we are not really seeing what they are using it
because
for,
accountability
it's something we need to,
also,
and I think for civil society we need to do more. I know we really want to do more, but we need also funding also to do more, to track, to hold whoever is responsible to account on all of these things. Because if you look at the ecological fund, it goes from state, federal has its own percentage, state has its own percentage, and while the local government has its percentage, and now the local government are going to be receiving funding directly from the federal government. So the question now is, who is doing what?
Okay, so let me take you back to when you talked about climate change. Now, do you think the leadership understands what actually climate change is? Now, we've talked about the federal, the state, and the local. Now, these kinds of situations happen mostly in the local governments. Do they really, or do you think they really understand what this climate change is all about and are putting policies in place or structures in place to ensure that we're ready for it?
Yeah, are you talking about federal, state?
The whole government.
All government.
Okay, the whole government, I would say they are aware. But what are they doing? The extent of what they're doing, it's a different thing. If you look at the last ranking of states in terms of who is addressing climate change, Lagos State came first. And we all know that Lagos State have been doing a lot since the time of our former governor, Fashola. And you remember that flood of that years back, I think 2010 or so, if I remember, it actually ravaged Lagos. But since then, have you seen that magnitude of flood in Lagos? No. Something was done. And I remember then, we as civil society, through the DFID supported program, we were engaging Lagos State, we are engaging House of Assembly, we are engaging governor, we are engaging everybody. Today, Lagos can be ranked as first because some people have really worked for it. And I think Lagos can still do more and do more because there are still places that are still going to be flooded in Lagos, of course, that has been flooded. And I'm not saying that we are perfect. No, Lagos may not be perfect, other states may not be perfect, but then I think we can still do more. So apart from that, at the local level, for us as civil society, we've been engaging local government. Even last month, I was in Niger State. We are engaging our gun. I was in Niger State to talk about net zero, but net zero is not really in a way directly linked to the extreme event, but we know that what is the cause of climate change is too much of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, isn't it? It has been accumulated years back, And it is the result we are seeing. So if we don't stop, look at the sources of greenhouse gases at the local level, then we will continue to have this kind of mad weather events that we're experiencing. So we are working with local government. I have 3 consortium partners, I think ICCDI and Connected Advocacy. We are working at local governments, though of course there's limitation to what we can do as civil society, and we are rolling out action plans for civil subnationals concerning net zero. Apart from that also, we are looking at other issues surrounding climate change in terms of addressing disasters, climate, extreme weather events that is really ravaging different communities.
You are speaking about the limitations that civil society have.
Yeah.
Let us have an insight into what's the problem or what the challenges, the key challenges are.
See, the key challenges are, if you want to hold government accountable, you need to meet with government officials. You need to have discussion. You need to have your data available to engage them, because I don't believe in doing advocacy from feelings at all. If you want to do real advocacy and you want to hold government accountable, then we must have what accountability framework with which we want to get our data and then go to government and say, this is what we have found out. We did that during COVID. All the time we were all on the ground giving government information about what is happening, and they were listening to us.
And it's not happening now?
Well, for now, I wouldn't say it's not happening. But at the scale at which we want to see it happen and then be able to arrest disasters such as this, is not happening. That's the truth. I will not say nothing is happening. No. People are doing several things everywhere in different states. I'm telling you. Because at the last...
Is anything at fault? Is anyone at fault? What exactly is hampering, these, or what is hampering or aiding these clogs?
What I'm saying is that the planning is not good enough. Over years, we have been experiencing this kind of flooding.
Absolutely.
It means that there's something wrong with our planning. We have not planned very well. You see, if you plan very well, you'll be able to minimize the kind of damage we are witnessing. I will explain this to you. When we are talking of hurricane, you see, hurricane have different names. And when it's going to land, we know when it is coming, isn't it? And when it is coming, for instance, if it is in the United States, once they know that an hurricane is coming, they would have given it a name, and people will be watching it through satellite. What day is it going to land? When is it going to fall? And they will project, and then they make adequate preparation so that they minimize the kind of damages that will happen. Are we doing that? We already know that these floods are coming. It's going to ravage almost 36 states of the Federation. What is our plan? I think the only plan we plan for is relief material, and that's not good enough.
So in all of this now, what more can government do? Every year we go to climate events, and it seems like we just go speak and listen to other people and come back without implementing a lot of the decisions there. And now we're talking about this operationalization fund, which is being pushed. What more can the government do beyond all that we have said right now? Can the government do to ensure that places that have been prone to flooding, that people do not relocate there? Because many people do not have information about these things, and when it happens, it gives, like for instance, the agency will give you a few days before it happened and give you an information that you relocate to higher planes and all of that. Yet people still relocate to those areas every year.
You see, like you said, we need proper education, especially for vulnerable populations and people who are living in those kinds of areas where we know flooding might actually affect. We need aggressive education to explain all this to them. And then we could have a map to show those hot spots. You know, there are times when you have visuals. Visuals help you to understand what is happening. Let's have these visuals at community levels, at state level, and at the federal level. Let's have those visuals. For instance, in Lagos, which communities are prone to flooding? I will tell you today in Lagos, even places where we think there are dry land uplands, they're experiencing flooding. You won't believe that last year, Ojokoro LCDA actually experienced massive flooding.
The trees fell. Yes.
So many things, so many houses were destroyed. That is an upland, which is not within Lagos Island, that is below the sea
Yet you
level.
see people moving to those areas.
Yeah, people are moving to upland because they believe that place is safer. Now the upland too is not safe. That's what we're saying.
Through climate change.
Yeah, so that is the essence of climate change, that we will be witnessing things we are not witnessing before. And we're witnessing it. So what we are saying is this: let's be proactive with our planning. Even if we need to move people, let's get them moved. Right now, as we are saying, in a few weeks, people are going to be affected. What have we done to remove people from those places? What have we done? Then what is the kind of high engineering technology that we are deploying? We know in other developed countries, they employ those. People will tell you what is happening in, I think, this European country that is also under sea level, that they've done a whole lot, that they hardly experience the kind of flooding we are experiencing. So can we learn from what others have done and do it? And this is massive water. Is there a way we can find a way to get this water stored in a place? Some places, they don't have this water.
Oh, you store
And
the
they
water.
need it.
Yeah, I need it. It's possible. There's nothing impossible if we apply our minds to it. In some places, they do rainwater harvesting. It's part of the solution. You may think, oh, how many rainwater can you get? Some people actually depend on rainwater harvesting for their domestic uses in other places. And then we know in the northern part of Nigeria, well, we say they don't have much rain, they don't have this. Now, we have a lot of rain now. So if we plan to store this much water for those seasons where there will not be rain, it's not better for us. That is what we call proactive planning. It's very important.
And in addition, you spoke, let me take you back to your earlier point where you spoke about what we can do about these dams, that end up collapsing as we see now.
If it collapses, it will be worse than this.
Will be worse.
Normally, we release the water so that it shouldn't collapse.
There is even some confusion as to, was this Alua Dam, was it open or did it just, burst as a result of the fact that it was full? So I don't know. And like you have said, now one is even worse than the other. We've also gotten warnings, that we are entering into the peak of the rainy season. So you can just imagine, what this could mean. But I want you to also, speak further as to the solutions. You are saying all the dams in Nigeria should, be evaluated.
Yeah, we need the evaluation.
Right.
We need a review of them. We need to know what the real problems are. What are the
Can it be done within this cycle?
Well, even if it cannot be done within this cycle, we can start. It's important to start that because we've been talking about this years back, but nobody's taking those decisions and those actions. And I think Mr. President needs to look at infrastructure development. There's a new special fund that has been established, and they need to factor in climate change, climate-proof infrastructure into that. Because if we mobilize a lot of funding for our infrastructure development and we're not taking account of climate change, we will still be back to these kinds of destruction. And after spending a whole lot of money doing Calabar Coastal Road, doing the Sokoto to Badagry, and then climate change now comes and start destroying what we have spent a whole lot of money to do. Then at the end of the day, what are we gaining? The kind of economic opportunity we want to harness as a result of opening up our roads and making it easy for people to move from one place to the other, then we are not going to get it. So I think that fund also, we need to look at it critically and see how we ensure that we mainstream climate change into it in terms of climate proofing our infrastructure. That is how we will build resilience.
Do you think that the advent or the opening up of cities to real estate firms has further exacerbated these issues that we have? Yeah,
for Lagos, yes. I can't talk of other states because in Lagos we know that a lot of our waterways have been impacted. A lot of people are building on waterways, and I remember the current Commissioner for Environment started destroying houses, removing them, which I think it's a good thing for Lagos to do. But then there are still so many that have been on those kind of waterways. All those places are still having a lot of significant, what I call the infrastructure on them. And I think we need to really look at it deeply. And then nobody's talking about the impact of sand filling. We have sand filled most of our waters. Every year you see people sand filling in Lagos. And we see sand miners too, pulling sand from the ocean, from the lagoon. This is Lagos.
These people get permits to do these things. Are the government agencies, are they not supposed to be aware of the dangers of doing this?
Well, I wouldn't know whether people have permits. I don't talk about what I don't know. Okay. But what I know is that all these things have implications because they can exacerbate extreme weather events.
Right, and looking at the impact of this worrying trend of floods, how do you assess the impact now? You spoke earlier as well about hospitals, patients even trapped in hospitals, correctional facilities, even the zoo, and all of that. In terms of food prices, and even looking at the dire straits that residents in Borno State, for example, are in, how do you look at how encompassing the impact of floods are to daily lives, really?
Honestly, if I have another word that is more horrible than devastation, maybe I would use it. It's quite horrific what is happening now. Like I've said earlier, we have other challenges already. Now, adding this layer of problems, first of all, people are going to fall deeper into poverty. No doubt about it. Because when you lose your home, you lose your clothing, you lose everything. Where do you go to? First of all, your family is dislocated. You have to scamper for your life. Find where to stay to get yourself better, to be able to address the implications of what has happened. So who is going to harbor you? Is there a safe haven? Even if there is, just like I said, it's not enough to take everybody. So you will likely try to look for a place with your friends, families, you understand, who also are not affected, because if all of them too are affected, how do you solve your problem? See, it's getting to the fabric of the community, destroying families already. And when the whole foundation of community is destroyed, which is the family, then there's trouble. It's going to escalate into more conflict if care is not taken. Already in Borno, we already have the Boko Haram issue. There's a whole lot of insecurity issues. There's a whole lot of people killing farmers, going to farm. And then imagine all the farms that have been cultivated. The water would have washed away what they've planted. So there may not be harvest in that state.
And perhaps to spur more action on the part of government, this, from what you are saying, does it have, what kind of burden does it give governments of the day?
So it's giving an additional burden to government. Government is trying to do a lot to improve our food systems in terms of productivity. Now, they've given farmers fertilizers, isn't it? Of course, but mono farmers too must have collected some fertilizers to boost food production. Now, whether we like it or not, food production is going to reduce as a result of these floods, because a lot of farms are going to be washed away. So how do we deal with that? So we need to start projecting in terms of shortage in food and what kind of food inflation is going to happen afterwards. We need to look at other ways of addressing these issues to make sure that we have enough food to feed our people. That is just one aspect of it. There are other aspects. Where would people live? Schools are also submerged. We know we have high number of out-of-school children, so we are going to have more out of school. And then you remember the education minister was saying that, no, you have to be 18 before, so people are going to be out of school permanently.
That has been jettisoned.
I hope so. How many people will now be out of school as a result of this flooding? Let's think about it. Because when flood comes, it doesn't discriminate. When it really happens in Lagos, those our high-end people in Lekki, they really suffer it. They know what it is. So whether you are rich or poor, you are going to be really dealt with. But the problem is that a poor person will have to look for a way of succor within his poverty. But the rich person may still have some stock up to move elsewhere. where will the poor man go to? Where will that poor woman go to? How did they deal with it? What about children? Children are so vulnerable here because some of them can be washed away. Your parents may also want to help you to protect you from this flood. But if you as a parent, you are still struggling to get yourself together, how do you also help your children? So there is a whole lot of downline of impacts that we have not really yet assessed. So it's massive, and I pray that God will help us to deal with this. It happens everywhere too, but what I'm saying is that if we plan very well, we can minimize the level of devastation that we are witnessing.
Well, let's hope that a lot of these things that you have said will be implemented to the latter. But also, while we talk about governments and other areas, local government, state government, what's the place of, first of all, the media, second, religious institutions? Because a lot of these people go to these places and listen to these people. What's their place in all of this?
Yeah, for media, we need them to start giving out stories of impact on this. You see, if you go to Borno now and give us some...
We have a correspondent there.
Yeah, excruciating stories.
Yes.
You know, personal stories of experiences to show to government what is happening. You see, we are all human. I'm sure our government is human. They will really look at it and they will know what to do and what action to take. Very, very important. Media needs to also join hands with civil society to do a lot of advocacy around this. Very, very necessary. We need to work hand in gloves with civil society to do more of advocacy. Not only advocacy, you can also help with maybe appealing to public to donate towards victims, because that could also help a lot. We know government cannot do everything, but donation from well-meaning Nigerians to help people in this form of problems will actually go a long way. And I know media can help to make a whole lot of announcements and publicity about where those people can put in funds to help people. I know Nigeria has what we call Victim Support Fund.
Yeah.
And I think we can also ask Victim Support Fund what they are going to do or what they're doing concerning what is happening in Borno. I know some years back they've done a lot. Even during COVID, they did a lot. And I think the Victim Support Fund can also help here. And just like I said, work with civil society to hold government accountable on ecological fund usage in Nigeria. So I think there are still many other things that people, the religious people, yes, they can contribute to relief materials. They can help their members who are affected, because I know church do a lot, mosque also do a lot, and all the religious people can now, this is now we need them to help their members who have actually been contributing towards the growth of the church. Yeah.
All right, Titi Akosa, we have to leave it at this point now. Thanks a lot for your contributions on the program.
Thank you very much.
Right, you're watching